We are nearing the tail end of our series on the prerequisites of integrity. Today I am finishing with consistency, which is the one of the most important, but tomorrow I want to talk about the last final factor. Stay tuned to the end and hear what that last factor is that I'm supremely excited to talk about. But I've saved this one here for the very tail end of our series, and I did that for a reason, and that is because this one here, consistency, I say is the backbone that undergirds and supports all of the other prerequisites that we have thus far covered. This is like, they're all so important. All of these prerequisites are so critical and crucial, but this one here I've made reference to throughout this series ongoing, and it is, in my estimation, one of the most important elements to apply as one walks with integrity. And young men, as I address you in this conversation specifically, just because you're the focal point for my intention to inspire, I want to see young men who are committing themselves to walking with integrity, because the world needs so many more of you. The world needs so many more of you operating under the mantle of integrity to be able to make exploits. Like, the thing is, as young men, we have desires, we have goals, we have things we want to experience and things we want to accomplish. But in the absence of integrity, I would say, from my experience, because I've been there for many years, there is a lot of pain, there's a lot of loss, there's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of just unfortunate things that happen when we don't apply ourselves to going through this life that we have now without integrity. And that's why I want to speak to you young men and saying so critical. And that's why we've gone through this whole series. I wanted to go through this series especially on prerequisites, because I'm wondering, for some of you young men, if you're trying to figure out, how do I actually see this working in my life? How do I apply myself? I know I was once there where I was thinking, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to embark on what it means to walk with integrity, and what does that actually look like. And so I came up with these prerequisites that I felt were supremely important from my experience, again, saying this is some of the things to be aware of. Here's some things to be watching and considering, and then applying as you gain awareness and understanding. And this prerequisites that we're talking about, consistency, is the one I feel that undergirds and supports all of the other prerequisites. Like I said, all of the other prerequisites are so important, like, without them, I'm not sure integrity would really stand really well. Consistency, however, I'm saying, is the backbone to integrity, especially in the way that it sustains all of these other prerequisites, and hence why we're talking about it today. The subtitle I thought was a little cheeky, without which it would fall. So, consistency, the backbone of integrity, without which it would fall, pun intended. Yes, cue the drum roll, or the drum capiche thing. But this is one of the final prerequisites that I want to touch on. Tomorrow, like I say, I'm going to talk about an even more critical one that I feel is more important even than consistency. Even though consistency undergirds all of the other ones, tomorrow I want to talk about that one. But stay till the end and I will reveal what that last one is that we'll focus on tomorrow, because that one, there is a tremendous delight. I'm so excited to share that one with you. I was excited to share this one here with you, but that one there even has a bit more excitement behind it. Like I said, I've mentioned consistency for some time now throughout all of these other prerequisites. It's been one of the main ones that has been sort of in the background, giving an assist as I've been talking about all of these other prerequisites. But even as consistency undergirds all of these other prerequisites, in fact, I would say they all depend on consistency. This one here, let me first of all define consistency, just so we know what we're talking about. Consistency is like the act of doing something over and over again without fail. It's the key to creating habits that form and create trajectories in life that we're on. It is this prerequisite has been so important for me. I featured it at the very outset of the way I define integrity. Listen carefully as I define integrity. So if consistency is doing something over and over again, creating habits and creating momentum that way, listen how I incorporate this prerequisite of consistency into my definition of integrity. I define integrity as the consistency, is right off the bat there, the consistent desire of one to match their internal values with their external actions while being true to themselves and respectful of those around them. Let me say it again. Integrity for me is the consistent desire of one to have their internal values match their external actions while being true to themselves and respectful to all those around them. That's how I define integrity. That's how integrity makes sense for me. There's a few different components there, but all those components are really important for me. But at the very outset, I wanted to include this word consistency because I see it so foundational in this pursuit of walking and experiencing integrity in our lives. Young men, I would say, even as you consider all of the proposals I have contributed by way of prerequisites for walking with integrity, this one here is so important. All of the other ones are not going to last. They're not even going to survive if this component of consistency is not in place. And hence why I place it right at the very outset of my definition of integrity. The consistent desire of one who wants to match their internal values with their external actions while being true to themselves and respectful of those around them. That is how important I believe this character trait is, this prerequisite for walking with integrity. Let me give you some examples of why I think this is so important, but these examples are more of a contrast, if you will. Consider that if we don't eat healthy, or if we don't consistently exercise, our bodies are going to feel the effects. They're going to suffer. I know what that's like, because this past year I've suffered twice already with some significant debilitating back pain issues, and it had me off work for a few months. That was because I was taking assumptions. I was assuming that I was exercising enough when my body needed more exercise, and so my body was deteriorating in its health. And so I had to address that and make some aims to get back online. And even now, I haven't worked out for a couple of weeks, and I'm not feeling the effects, but I know that I want to be proactive about caring for my body. I need to do that consistently. If we don't consistently clean ourselves and have showers and take care of our grooming and so on, our personal hygiene is going to suffer. And if we don't consistently walk in integrity, we aren't going to become better versions of ourselves. I think I'm going to make a short on this one here a little bit later, but hear that statement again. If we don't apply ourselves to walking with integrity, I believe we don't have the option of becoming better versions of ourselves. Think of integrity, if you will, as a body, like say the human body. Think of integrity as a human body, and all these prerequisites that I've been talking about, consider them as like the vital organs of the body and the limbs of the body. Those are pretty important parts of the body, and so I would say all these prerequisites are really important components of integrity, and consistently looking after our body and the health of our body is just as important as consistently maintaining the health of our integrity by focusing on all these prerequisites and endeavoring to see them actualized in our lives. And so that's why I wanted to save this prerequisite for the very tail end of this series of prerequisites that I've been going through, because I think it is so important. Let's go through each and every one of those prerequisites that we've already talked about this far. Let's consider where we start off with self-awareness. Self-awareness, that ability to know oneself really well, one's values, one's intentions, one's commitments and motivations. Self-awareness is so important, And when you apply yourself to it, you have a better understanding of who you are, what you stand for, and how you're engaging in this life. Not only that, but with self-awareness, you're also able to be aware of those things that are happening around you. When you're self-aware, you understand your place in the midst of your surroundings as well. Without consistency, however, self-awareness tends to be sporadic. It tends to not be fully aware of one's reference point of who they are. What are their strengths and their weaknesses? What are the things that matter to them? When you're inconsistent in your application of self-awareness, you find that you're a little bit confused about what is your place in this life and what are you trying to accomplish and how are you going to get there and what are your plans. And you're like a leaf in the wind that's just blown this way and then that way. It has no control over which way it wants to go, as opposed to the rock that just sits and is unmoved by the shifting currents of air. And when you're also self-aware, you're able to not easily be moved or swayed by perspectives that sound so compelling because you know exactly what you stand for. Secondly, we talked about the prerequisite of honesty. Honesty. Without consistency in applying honesty, we would not have a reservoir of reliability. We would be untrustworthy. We would be questionable. Honesty for many in their experience, they only apply when it's easy, when it's beneficial to themselves. That's not the kind of honesty we're talking about here. Honesty with integrity applies itself even when the scenario is difficult and situations are challenging. It still applies itself in saying, no, this is the principle I operate from. I'm honest. I speak the truth. And even in those settings, honesty is still on display. That's for one who walks consistently and applies consistency to the prerequisite of honesty. They say, rain or shine, difficulty or not, I'm still going to choose to be honest because that is what integrity demands. We went on to talk about responsibility and how that entails like taking ownership of things that you've committed to. When you step up and say, yeah, I'm going to do something, you follow through on it. That's consistency on display through the prerequisite of responsibility, and you are known to be reliable. You're known to be a man of your word. When you say you'll do something, you're going to do it. And if you're barred from accomplishing said task, then you still have that ability to follow through consistently on communicating to those that are waiting on you and making plans to make sure your responsibilities are attended to. But if you're not consistent in the application of responsibility, you're not seen as reliable. You're not seen as one that people can depend or trust upon. You're not seen as one who is trustworthy. They aren't as likely to depend on where you're wanting to lead them, or when you say you'll sign up for something, there's a sense of uncertainty. Is this going to get done? Is he going to be on point this time, or is he going to be inconsistent? Responsibility is really critical while it's applied with consistency. And then we went on to talk about accountability and how with accountability, there are so many who refuse to take accountability. There are so many who find it far easier to blame circumstances and life and things, everything except for themselves. They're not accountable because it wasn't their fault. It was the weather's fault. It was their partner's fault. It was the kids. It was the car. Like, it was so many other things. And accountability really calls us as young men to courageously step up to the plate when we need to take responsibility for our actions. We said responsibility and accountability are different in that responsibility is for things that you haven't done and you're committing yourselves to, and accountability is with reference to things that you have taken responsibility for, and you're now having to give a report for how you did those things. So with reference to accountability, step up and take ownership and admit when you're wrong. Make plans to fix it if that's necessary. This takes courage. This takes consistency in applying oneself to it. What does that look like for you as a young man to take accountability without deferring that if you're the one who needs to be held accountable for it? How can we stop from giving excuses? How can we stop from passing on the buck on it instead of saying, I'm responsible? One of the most frustrating ways that I see a lack of accountability that I think sows a lot more disillusion culturally and societally is like when politicians don't step up and take ownership and accountability for their actions. When they are able to spin things and just not step up and say, no, this is what I did. That's just, that I can see why people are disillusioned with politics, for example, when it comes to that. I know what that's like too, because once upon a no, I don't actually. I took accountability, but I know what it's like to, I know what it's like to hurt many because of lack of honesty. Once upon a time, I was in that space as a public figure who had sown a lot of mistrust, and I know what that's like to break trust with people who have trusted you. And in my experience, it took me a long time, but I finally stepped up and took accountability for it. And that was me facing the music and taking ownership of my actions and doing the right thing. And that was painful, and yet it was still necessary. This is what integrity demands from us. Further on from accountability, we also talked about courage. Actually, we started off with courage, if I remember. Courage was the instigating catalyst for this whole series on the prerequisites, and I included courage as one of those prerequisites. Courage to walk with integrity. It's not for the faint of heart, young man. It's gonna make you face yourself. It's gonna make you face yourself and see some things that are scary. When you are trying to reflect on, say, why am I the way I am, and why do I do this? And like, it's very daunting. It's very challenging. And kudos to all of you, not young men specifically, but all of you who choose to walk with integrity. A huge kudos, because this is not for the faint of heart. This is like a gutsy thing. This is a courageous thing, especially when you choose to do this over and over in a daily way. There are so many easier things to do in life than to do this. And when you step up to do this, to make yourself better, to work on yourself, to look internally and say, I have some work to do, that's a courageous thing. That takes courage. When you don't do this with consistency, however, you're haphazard in your application of walking into this space. And it doesn't get easier. It actually gets harder when you just do it once in a while. It's intermittent. And you don't actually get used to the hard work of saying, what does it look like for me to do the hard things in getting to be a better version of myself? When you're inconsistent, you just say, I'll only do when I feel like it. And honestly, when we feel like it is not the transformative times. The transformative times of change personally for ourselves is when we're in those hard times. When we step up to do the hard thing. The things that are uncomfortable, the things that require us to stretch ourselves a little bit, that's when we experience change. And with courage, consistently applied, you continue to walk into those experiences where it's a little uncomfortable and you're stretching yourself, but as you continue to do so with consistency, you start changing internally. You start becoming more courageous. You start being more bold. You start being aware of what you stand for. You start being decisive. You start speaking your mind. You start taking your power back. All of this is so important. And young men, so many of us, and I'm speaking of myself as you once upon a time, because I longed for this and I didn't have access to this. But this is what walking with consistency as you pursue walking in integrity looks like. It's necessary that you infuse your expressions of courage, your acts of courage with consistency. And you do it in a way that's honorable and aligned with your values. We talked about respect and what that looks like. Respect when we give it to others, and we talked about how we give respect so generously. We're like, for most of us, we feel we give a lot of respect to people around us, and we may be consistent in that, which is good, but we don't give ourselves respect, and that's where we really need to start off with. Our sense of self-respect is at an all-time low culturally, and this is where we need to start. I argued in that conversation, saying we need to apply respectfulness to ourselves consistently first. In the absence of doing that, we continue to give out of an empty reservoir. When you don't fill yourself with self-respect, when you don't apply being kind and gracious and patient and gentle with yourself, when you don't do this, but you give it to others, the question I'm asking is, where are you getting all of the things you're giving to others? And it would seem like what you're giving to others is almost empty because you don't know what that experience is like for yourself. Get it for yourself first. Apply this consistency in respecting and honoring yourself first. Get steeped up in it, get full with it, be overflowing with it, and then you're able to now give respect to others in really meaningful and compelling ways because it aligns internally and externally. And this is what it means to walk with integrity, being aligned internally and externally. When I give respect to people around me who I get to interact with, they feel the respect. But what they don't know is I'm not impoverishing myself. In fact, my reservoir of self-respect is overflowing. Like I've got so much respect for me. And what people are getting is just like the overflow. I'm well sustained. I'm not depleted in any way. I know how to advocate for myself. I know how to establish what respect to me looks like and communicate what that looks like. But all that's important. If this is sounding wonderful, but you don't know what this could look like and you'd like to hear more, I would love for you to drop me a line in the comments. I would love to maybe feature a specific in-depth exploration of what this looks like. So let me know if that's of interest to you. Drop me a line in the comments. I would happily invest in serving you that way. We talked about what consistency looks like in transparency. Transparency when you're able to be upfront about all your dealings, especially with relation to understanding what the other person wants to hear by way of what they feel would be like really informative and so on. Transparency inconsistently applied is where you are again lagging and lacking in this trust component. You're unreliable when you're inconsistent and being transparent. People are not sure if you're this time giving everything or if you're just holding something back. And so transparency almost shoots itself in the foot there if it's not consistently applied. But integrity demands every part of our life. When we apply ourselves to integrity, it's not like we can say, okay, I want to apply in this way but not in this way, because then integrity is like, but that's not what I'm all about. I'm all about everything holistically, all of you, your mind, your heart, your soul, your physical stat, like everything is on the table with integrity. And that's why even as we were talking about these prerequisites with integrity, integrity is saying, I want it all. I want it all because I want to transform you. I want to transform you into being something consistent and aligned. I don't want you to just pick and choose and say, oh, I want this part here and not this part. That doesn't work with integrity. And integrity demands not only that you apply yourself in all these prerequisites, but especially in this one here with consistency. So critical, so critical. We went on from transparency to talk about empathy and what that looks like, without which it can seem to be manipulative when you are inconsistent in the way you show empathy. And the question would be like, why are you showing empathy in this scenario but not in this one here? What are you really trying to aim for here? Instead of saying, I'm going to be consistent in showing empathy across the board in the way that I show empathy, regardless of who they are or where they're coming from. Commitment. Again, consistency here does not make sense if consistency does not make sense if commitment isn't part of it. In fact, the whole point of this conversation here is to encourage and challenge a young man to be committed to consistency. Can you commit to walking consistently with integrity and all these other prerequisites that we've been looking at so far? Consistency is so essential to integrity because it ensures that each prerequisite is applied and maintained. As I was saying before, integrity isn't the kind of thing you sign up for on your own terms. When you're signing on for integrity, in essence, integrity is saying, I'm taking all of you. It reminds me of a scene or two in, I think, Harry Potter, and that is where when a couple of the characters are about to sign a contract or make an oath, I think the way this spell works is it sort of commits them to, and now they're bound magically to fulfill the oath that they just signed on for. And in a similar way, that's what integrity is calling for. Integrity is saying, if you're signing up to walk alongside me, if you're signing on to live by my dictates, I'm gonna say everything in your life is mine. I'm going to own everything, and I'm going to take you and rework you into something different. Why? Because by nature, we're not individuals of integrity. There's no one person in this life who's born perfect. None of us is ever going to see perfection on this side of death. However, despite that none of us is born with integrity, each and every one of us has to apply ourselves to the moral framework that makes sense to us and how we see right versus wrong and how we're applying ourselves in this life. And integrity says, I'm going to take all of your understanding of what's right and wrong, and I'm going to like hone it so that there's a consistency internally and externally, and I'm not going to let you play it fast and loose with the things that you still want to goof around on. I'm going to say everything is mine, from self-awareness to honesty to responsibility to accountability to courage to respect to transparency to empathy to commitment. All of it is mine, and it is extremely territorial. Integrity is it's not going to let you sort of have a smorgasbord experience. In essence, it's going to say you're going to take everything and you're going to eat it, and you're going to do so in a way that's going to transform and change it into something different. Now, this might sound like really demanding. And it might sound daunting, and you might be like, I'm not sure I want to live with integrity now because that's quite a high cost. And I would say, I could see, and I can affirm it's a high cost. But there's one critical element that's left in all of this. This would all be cumbersome and lacking any essence of attractiveness, if not for this one last thing. And I haven't talked about this yet, but I've mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, and that is the most exciting part for me. Why would one apply themselves to such a transformation where integrity demands everything? It's because one desires it. Desire is that last thing that I haven't really talked about, haven't given any hint that it's on the horizon, and it is so important, my dear listener. Without desire, young man, why would you even bother doing this? Why would you even walk through this? This is like, this is a lot of work. If not for desire. Why do young men go to the gym today? It's because they desire a physique that is worthwhile looking at, right? Why do young men apply themselves to various trades and skill sets? It's because they desire something in it. Why do they apply themselves as hard as they do to whatever they find entertaining, like gaming or climbing or whatever it is? It's because of a desire to accomplish something. And this is a really high calling. This is a really demanding experience for one to walk with integrity. It demands everything, like I said. Why would you do it? If it's so demanding, it's because you desire it. Otherwise, don't bother. Don't bother. Continue living as you would. Continue experiencing life in the way that makes sense to you. But when you come to a point, dear young man, where you're like, I don't like where my life has come to, and I don't like what I'm experiencing, I'm not who I want to be, and I wish I were something more of what I could be, that's when you start seeing desire coming up and saying, I want to apply myself to the demands of integrity. That's where you see the desire that fuels your way through this really challenging season. When it was my moment of decision to walk with integrity, and it was really critical, and I knew that my life was about to change. I was about to take the deep dive. I was about to cut the strings. I was about to burn the boats so that there's no chance of retreating back to where I once came from. It was a real momentous decision, but it was driven by desire of what could be. So do you desire to see this kind of transformation in your life where you are a totally different person, one whom you're thrilled with seeing in the mirror, and you're like, I like the me that I see, and I know that the space I have in here and in here is just beautiful and fantastic? Well, that it only comes about by following that desire to consistently walk in integrity. And that's why I am making these addresses and these conversations for you, young man, is to incite and inspire this longing of what could be. I'm on this side now talking about it experientially, By no means have I accomplished or mastered it. I'm still in the journey. But I want to describe for you who are on the other side where I once was, saying, is this possible? And I want to say it is possible, and I want to invite you to come and join. I want to compel you to consider committing yourself to consistently walking in integrity because you desire it. It is going to be challenging. It's not going to be easy. I'm not going to like sugarcoat it. It's going to like take you to some deep places internally, but it is so worthwhile. And I hope that this desire continues to grow to the point that you can't help but say, okay, time to act, time to initiate, time to do this. If you've really enjoyed this conversation today, I would appreciate a couple of things. One, just drop me a note down below. Drop me a note expressing your appreciation on what this meant to you and how this communicated to you, and the things that you're learning along the way about yourself, and the things that you long for, desire, what your current experience looks like. I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. Secondly, I'd love for you to like the video as well if you enjoyed it. And if you aren't already a part of this community here that I'm building that is passionately pursuing walking in integrity, subscribe, won't you? And let's walk together for a little bit longer. Thank you once again for joining in another episode of Inspiring Young Men to Integrity with Binyam. I will chat with you in the next video where we're gonna talk about desire. So excited, I can't wait. Talk soon. Bye for now.